So from David Cameron to Theresa May to Boris Johnson to Liz Truss to Rishi Sunak to Keir Starmer, probably now to Andy Burnham. A series of Prime Ministers then in just 10 years since the Brexit vote was held exactly 10 years ago today. Starmer announcing his departure with 3 weeks now for candidates to replace him to come forward. Burnham the most likely, although there is pressure within Labour Party ranks for someone to come forward to challenge him so the election does not just become a simple coronation. Well, let's talk about all the latest issues. Joining us is our correspondent Benedicte Paviot, who is in London for us, and here on set, Rochelle Ferguson-Bouyahi from our International Affairs desk. Let's start with you, Benedicte. I mean, a real pressure, as I said there, within Labour just to find someone to challenge Andy Burnham. Why?
Well, first, welcome to London, the British capital, on the 23rd of June 2026. We were standing here 10 years ago exactly, and that surprise result where the British people voted to leave the European Union, and more turbulence in British politics. Why trying to challenge Andy Burnham? Well, it's very much because a growing number of Labour MPs are concerned that there needs to be a leadership challenge so that there can be some fleshing out of what a Prime Minister, Andy Burnham, who is clearly the favourite, the front runner, and so far uncontested. Nobody is announcing their desire to challenge him. Wes Streeting, who the former Health Secretary, announced yesterday, shortly after Mr. Starmer's resignation, that he would not be standing and he'd be lending his support to Andy Burnham. So this morning we have two Labour MPs who are considering challenging Mr. Burnham for the Labour Party leadership and then de facto becoming the Prime Minister and having the keys to Downing Street. And that is the former Armed Forces Minister Al Cairns, and the other one is a senior Cabinet Minister, Darren Jones. So, as I said, for the moment, Mr. Burnham is unopposed. The nominations will actually open on the 9th of July. We understand they will close on the 16th of July. And if nobody else does challenge, whether it's Al Cairns, whether it's Darren Jones or anybody else, then Mr. Burnham would be unopposed, and we could have a coronation, so to speak, of Andy Burnham in Downing Street on the 17th of July, which is very soon.
Well, Rochelle, I mean, it is yet another pivotal moment, isn't it, in British politics?
It is a pivotal moment. For the fifth Prime Minister in 4 years for the UK. Starmer, of course, setting the scene for what looks like, which could be at this stage, Andy Burnham to take his place. It's worth just, talking a little bit about Burnham and who he is. We know that he's a veteran of Labour governments, both under Gordon Brown and then, of course, under Tony Blair. And since 2017, he's been the Mayor of Greater Manchester. Now, depending on who you speak to, a lot of people feel that what he did was a stellar job there, notably because of it's quite distinctive politics in the northwest of England. So he's grappled with that pretty well. And of course, this is, an area of England which is, rapidly growing. So it's thought that he did a great deal of good work there, thriving in that position, known as the King in the North for some. So, as Benedict was saying there, the timetable looks pretty clear. If Burnham does face this challenge, then what will happen is Starmer will remain as interim until the 1st, at which time the 1st of September, I should say, and at which time a new leader will be put into place, and that will coincide with Parliament, which resumes, of course, on the 1st of September.
Benedicte, I mean, it is notable, isn't it, that all of this comes exactly 10 years on from the Brexit vote. I mean, the issue still, to a certain extent, doesn't it, kind of dominates British politics, even though David Cameron initially called that vote to try to stop that happening.
Yes, you're absolutely right. If we cast our minds back 10 years ago, David Cameron, having unexpectedly for him and not predicted by the polls, a very small majority, felt obliged to offer that referendum. We were in the street on that Saturday morning when he came back from Brussels and announced that date of the 23rd of June. we know what the result was. So fast forward to 2026, and what we've got is we've had a Keir Starmer government very much trying to reset, warm up, rebuild the trust between the United Kingdom and the EU, not to join the single market, not to enter the customs union, nothing like that, but basically to see what deals could be made, what alignment, for example, economically could be made between the United Kingdom and the EU. So that's the context, if you will. But interestingly, that very shortly after Mr. Starmer in Downing Street came out to that lectern and announced that he was going to be going, but not yet gone, that he would oversee what he hoped would be an orderly transition, that we then suddenly heard announced by Brussels that the Brexit, well, the summit, the reset summit that was due to be held on the 22nd of July was postponed by the EU. So that is quite telling. Does Brussels think that they actually have a better ear, a more friendly ear in Mr. Burnham? Let's remember that during the campaign to become Member of Parliament, which he needed to do if he was to challenge, and if he is to challenge and succeed Keir Starmer, he needs to be an MP, and he was sworn in Parliament behind me yesterday afternoon, so he can now officially say that he's doing that. But he was focusing on becoming MP of Macclesfield near Manchester, and he did say at one point, I hope that in my lifetime I'll be honest, that we will rejoin the EU. Then he somewhat watered that down because there was some criticism of the fact that he seems so, quote, EU friendly. So Mr. Burnham has sometimes been accused of flip-flopping, and certainly he's not been giving huge prominence to any statements so far. We expect a big speech from him next week to clarify things on the economic front. But as I said, he's untested. What I can tell you is that a survey of 2,245 Britons aged 18 and older carried out in May found that 48% said Brexit was going worse than expected. That's up from just 28% 5 years ago. Some 9% said it was going better than expected, and about 1 in 3 said Brexit was doing as expected. And about 60% of the British population would like to rejoin the EU, and 40% would not like to and are happy with the decision of leaving the EU. So the EU, as you said, although not always front headline, is very much part of the political landscape. And I would suggest very much germane to the fact that we've had so many prime ministers. It's like a revolving door. Will that revolving door turn again on the 17th of July? Will we see Keir Starmer go and visit the King and give his resignation and then get a PM, Andy Burnham? It looks very likely today, a decade on from that historic vote.
Benedicte, thanks so much. We'll let you go and get out of that sun, which must be pretty baking. Benedicte Paviot joining us there from London. Rochelle Ferguson-Bouyahi is still with me here on set. Rochelle, I mean, how have we got to this point then, would you say?
Well, it was interesting, Benedicte speaking about Brexit there. That, of course, will once again be firmly on the UK domestic political agenda. Coming back to this whole saga, if you will, with Starmer and potentially Burnham will replace him. You know, Starmer started off well. This 23 months, though, rapidly changed for him following that landslide victory in 2024. He started off, you know, a softly spoken, quite well-respected human rights lawyer. Somebody they thought that he could restore the kind of, you know, let's say, the stability of the country, stability within the Labour Party as well, which was severely lacking. Off there, a few faux pas from Starmer's perspective. There was the stripping of that winter fuel allowance that, got a lot of people, notably pensioners in the country, quite angry. There were controversial changes to the welfare system that would have, if he hadn't made a U-turn, affected up to 1.2 million people in the country who suffer from disabilities. There was the Labour manifesto that proved quite catastrophic, plus the Mandelson affair. You know, he was Starmer appointed Mandelson as the UK ambassador for the US, despite the fact that we knew about his links with Jeffrey Epstein. So a lot of faux pas on Starmer's part. And then this issue of populism, you know, with that rising populism in the UK, it was increasingly felt that perhaps Starmer wasn't the person who could turn the Labour Party, to this wholly successful party that could challenge the populist movement against Nigel Farage, the Reform Party. So many questions there, and ultimately, this leading to his resignation under increasing pressure from Labour members.